Yo. Good morning. Good morning. Good people. Fine people. My people. It is the 27th of May. It is a Thursday. Oh, yeah. I am going hatless for the third time on this podcast. By the way, this is Ride Along with Runman. I'm your host, Justin, also known as Runman. Ooh. I'll get the recycling later. I call myself Runman because I run can, and you can come with me if you like or dare. So, we're jovial today. We're jovial, and I'll tell you why. I've been drinking green tea for weeks. 2 weeks? 2.5? Something like that. Yesterday, I went to Costco and I got myself some eggs, some cheese, and some beans. So basically, I got myself gas, and also, I got myself a drum of coffee. But before we talk any more about that, let's do the thing that the caffeine compels me to do after I've had cups. We begin running. We begin running. So motivated. I will sing to you. Ah, yes. I was doing a lot of singing these last couple of episodes. You didn't see those episodes, and I'm going to call them scratches. I am not publishing them. They're going to be deleted. There are 2 of them, and we'll go over that. But for now, we're jovial. And I'm checking my throat because yesterday I drank the green tea very hot. And I have a minor burn in the back of my throat. So all the talking that I've been doing on those podcasts, published or not, plus all that, well, that puts me in a right position, doesn't it? Fortunately, hydration addresses that to an extent. And I've been basically devouring water first thing every morning and second or third to last thing every night. So we're getting up there. Multiple gallons a day. 1.5, 2 gallons, that kind of thing. So, about the last podcasts. I'm going to admit some things. And I think I've probably touched on them before, but just in terms of being transparent about it, I am aware that there's no way that I can speak a word or two without doing some kind of self-reflection on what I'm saying, who my audience is, what my prerogative is, what force am I serving, what parts of myself am I expressing or not expressing, what am I honoring and what am I degrading when I speak. When I want this to be a free podcast, and I do, and when I say that I want it to also be raw, and I do, those may all be things that can happen, but at the same time, I'm always going to self-censor to an extent. So, when it comes to the last podcast episode, I was in a really triumphant mood. I was feeling very good, but I wasn't... But I was still kind of coming off, I was still riding the coattails of my self-indulgent, dire attitude, the previous podcast. So they were 2 that were very aligned with each other, but not aligned for my intents and purposes as they stand at large for the podcast, right? So I get to decide, and this is where the creative freedom of this thing really speaks to me, and I'm kind of liking it. I'm playing around with it a little bit. So I get to decide what I want to put out. I have the ultimate freedom of power in that, and I really used it. I really pondered it. I thought about it. And I realized it's not, it wouldn't work too far against the podcast to have published those episodes. But I also had the chance to be like, okay, well, the way that I was showing up is something that I can think about. Is this how I want to show up for this podcast? And the answer was, well, it's okay either way. And so given that freedom, I decided, I published a lot of these. I plan on publishing most of the ones that I put out. I don't plan on just talking for no reason in front of a camera that's not going to end up recording something that'll be on the internet. So I don't know, I really did that dance, and it was quite nice. I was just really heavy for the first episode, and I think there's a time and a place for heaviness, and I think there's contexts for heaviness. And I think most of the time, you're going to see me in those circumstances when I'm feeling a little heavy on my runs, because that's a spectrum that I want my audience to have good access to, because I'm a human being. The whole point of this podcast is I'm not special, but human beings are special, so I am special. And I'm on the same level as everybody else. So within certain pretty generous parameters, for most people, when I talk of riding, most people can ride one way or the other in some way. Really, it could have been just apply yourself somehow with Run Man. But that wasn't quite as sexy as Ride Along with Run Man sounded. I like a little alliteration. Anyway, so yeah. So I realized it would have been okay either way, and I decided, in this case, I'm going to say no. In this case, I'm going to curate. Just a little bit. Just what was that? It was about 2 hours of content. Yeah, I did like a 45-minute run, and then I did like an hour and 37, hour and 40. So 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that. Which ultimately, it's not that much. It's a couple of episodes. So, what would have been episode 21 of the podcast, this is now the official 19th episode. Welcome. Thank you, my friend. All right. That guy saw me and did not pull in ahead of me or on top of me, so that's good. Whenever you can communicate with those that are in vehicles, that's a thumbs up in my book. So this run has no length agenda or time agenda. I just wanted to recalibrate. My early afternoon is more or less free. Got a couple of things to move around, a couple of things to research. Nothing is a big deal. And the main task does not require that I don't run. In fact, the main task, to an extent, can help me with the main thing. The podcast can help me with the main task that I have at hand right now and this afternoon. In fact, it's one that is sporadically manifested in my general life. And I think that goes for all of us, but I'll just bring it up now for myself in my own journey. I'm talking about sitting with your feelings. I'm talking about checking in, seeing what's going on, being a little kind to yourself, being cool, intending and resolving to continue showing up like this, and then boom, we're back. Checking in and allowing yourself the proper time to process. I'm at a clinch point. I'm at a pivot point in my life. I made that much very clear, overabundantly clear, the last couple of episodes. I think Cliff Notes will suffice. We're doing all right. Every time I think I'm not doing all right, I turn around and I do something like my Wim Hof breathing, or get one full night's sleep, or just have one good work day, because Uber Eats is working out pretty good right now. In fact, better than I thought that it would. And I was afraid to hope what I was hoping. And we went over. Hell yeah. Like all these things, not that they're non-issues. These basic adulting things of adapting to change and that kind of thing. But God, like, I only stress out when I stress myself out, it seems like, over these things. And then I come back to center, and then I can go back to sleep. But it takes the tuning in, the chilling out, the releasing of the meat claw of justice. Sorry, not justice, of the meat claw of judgment. That's the word. From myself. God knows I've got enough meat hooks in the body of my psyche, and enough scar tissue in the body of my psyche from times when I just didn't allow myself to not plant these expectations in. I think we talked about the 4 tendencies a few episodes ago. We might not have, but I'm the type of a human being, to give you more cliff notes, at least the way that I see myself as the kind of guy who, when someone levies a series of expectations upon me, expectations that might be reflective of a really healthy environment, a really healthy relationship, or not, just expectations. I expect these things. These are my hard sells and my non-negotiables when it comes to you. The I want you tos, the I need you tos, the eye to eye make or breakers, all that stuff. I just tend to respond negatively. I tend to resist expectation provided from sources that come outside of myself. And a lot of folks feel the same way. It's not 100%. There's a lot of artificial people pleasing in the substrata of my systemic infrastructure. Let's keep using big words. I'm confident I've had caffeine today. But with all that said, there's another aspect to it too. Let's talk about Punnett squares. The 4 tendencies is essentially a Punnett square of your reaction to expectations levied from a direction regarding your own orientation. So expectations levied from without, from other people, from the needs of the moment, as spoken to you by something, or as given to you by some other source outside of yourself. Okay, I reject that. The other way this works is from the inside out. Or from the inside of the self, that is. So I guess from the inside in. Expectations levied at me, from any old place. From good places, from judgmental places, make or break places, hard sells, need tos, whether they come from things that are rooted and founded in adaptive, optimally developmentally juicy things, or if I'm just walking down the crazy path and indulging myself in unnecessary I needs and oh I hopes and what ifs and that kind of thing. When I encounter expectations levied from within, I react the same way as when they're levied from without. Some people, let's take accountability buddies, for instance. Some people thrive on accountability buddies. A lot of people do. Within a certain context, I can as well. But for some people, they will not set the alarm clock. They will not obey the alarm clock. But if their partner sets the alarm clock, or if they're a part of a study group that's got somebody who's like, I'm the alarm guy. I'm going to set all your alarms. I'm going to choose a text to be like, hey, Maria wants you to get the hell up so we can make Bio 101 and pass this thing together. Like a team, go team. You'll show up for the team. You won't hit the snooze on the team, even if you would do it for yourself. So that's a different part of the Punnett square. You'll respond well to expectations levied from without and not listen to yourself from within, even if the thing that you're expecting of yourself is a good thing. I'm gonna get up and exercise, New Year's, beach weight, whatever, right? I'm the type, I see myself anyway this way, as rejecting all of it. So what do you do with that guy? How do you motivate that guy? Well, fortunately, I have traits that are themselves partial antidotes to this. Antidotes, not anecdotes. One of my traits is that I'm delightfully self-motivated. It doesn't take much to inspire me. It doesn't take much to motivate me. Just my natural threshold is low. So if something does end up working, and it's an exceptional case, or if something does make a fair amount of sense, or if some other strategy that I'm employing is clicking, it's going to click hard, and it's going to click far. And I'm going to take it and run. If I'm feeling it, I'm going to get up and go. That's who I am. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I make my own energy. So it doesn't take much to get going. And even if I have none, I can make some. If I'm treating myself right, it just starts happening. I think those are traits that people often associate with creative types. You know, I think it was on one of the podcasts that will not be published, a bee came up and struck me in the nose hard from the side. Didn't sting me, but it flew doggedly at me and struck me in the side of my right nostril. Hard enough that I felt it beat its wings 3 or 4 times, trying to achieve liftoff and stabilize after the collision. I was fine. Poor thing. I'm a greasy guy. That is at least one greasy wing that guy's got. But he didn't spurn me for it. I happened to be in an intersection at the time. I happened to be eyeballing this guy who was pulling up. The light had been red for a while, so he couldn't go anywhere. He hadn't been able to go anywhere for a long time. But he just kept creeping further and further into my part of the intersection, the crossing part. He was halfway through it when he stopped. So here I am, banking around him, looking for him, looking for his eyes, so that I can do the, I see you, you see me, fucker, that thing. So, I was doing that, the bee struck me. I cleared his vehicle after I saw that he stopped, and I saw that his body language said that he was looking and alert enough to know what's going on. It was a big truck. You want to know that if you're going to cross that truck. Big white truck. This is 2 days ago, mind you. And when that happened, by the time I cleared the intersection, which is the intersection to a fire station, so sometimes it's kind of half open and you're not sure if there's going to be action at some point. So I'm still roused. I'm still processing a lot of data that might pertain to me in my slow-moving, leg-fueled propulsion. But through all that, as soon as the bee hit me, I was absurdly not just grateful for the not being stung, which was immediate, but I was also like, motherfucker, what is this life that my eyeballs and facial orifices attract the insects of the world? Or that my field simply doesn't dissuade these creatures whose senses are a little different than human beings' senses. Either or, I think it's actually more an issue they just don't see me than it is they see me and they're like, oh, that's a flower. It's a weird greasy flower. It's a weird body odor providing flower. Anyway, so through all that, that was to illustrate, that anecdote was to illustrate, there's nobody out here, let's walk this. It was to illustrate that, and remember, I was still kind of mired in my own thinking 2 days ago doing that episode. I was still really responding It was really more like reacting to some of the needs of the moment, demanding a lot of my bandwidth, and I was just kind of processing that verbally. So I was already in an interesting place. Didn't have a lot to work with, but I still ran that day. And I still, when that happened with that bee, the first thing I did was laugh. I was laughing for like half a block, like, oh my God, did you see that? And it didn't sting me. That was the one part of the podcast I regret you're not going to see. But don't worry, it'll happen again. It always does. Could be just a case of me crafting my own prophecies. I don't know. But again, easily motivated, and I can start from nothing and just go. Excellent partial antidotes to a resistant, reactive, motivational apparatus within my system. While we're at it, I may as well, just because this is the thing that was told to me when I went over this the last time, with some people who knew a bit more about this Punnett Square than I know. People who lived in the same part of the Punnett Square had a little bit of advice for me, and they'd been running this way for a while. They said, hey, you might find that you can motivate yourself in all these ways, which is great. But if you need a technique, one technique you might be able to get some use out of is finding these expectation levying resistant type folk. If you encountered them, or if you're having a rough day yourself, and you're trying to get it done, you're trying to get out there and get at it, particularly if it's a distasteful series of activities you need to engage in order to satisfy the needs that your expectations are trying to address, one thing that you can do is practice tying everything back to your sense of freedom. Oh, I'm doing this thing now, and it might feel constrictive, and it might feel like I just want to say fuck you to the man within or the man without, capital M, the hammer, culture, whatever. In any of those cases, if I can draw a line from the activity that I'm doing and the need that it's serving, even further back to how, in the big picture, that's going to provide me with a bigger, more open world to play in. Well, if you give me a chance to play, what do? I go from nothing, and I get giddy over very little things, and get supercharged easily. That's the perfect environment for me. Kind of like right now. I had a really nice conversation today, and I was processing a lot of things. I was given a lot of data that I can make a lot of use of that ties in a very direct way to a bigger, more playful, and more open world. And now I find myself playing with that toolkit. And I find myself processing possibilities. And I find myself swimming through visions with my eyes wide open to the real world of what might be around the corner. Okay, let's get real. Around 3 or 4 corners that are each spaced very far apart from each other. But how far? I don't know. I'm not worried about hows and whens as much as I'm worried about the what is going on, what needs to happen, and the why. Why I want to show up for it, why I want this world of playing to be a bit more the case. Ooh. Did you guys catch that? A couple of lizards chasing each other. I think those were lizards. We have salamanders out here with beautiful blue bellies, and we also have lizards. Like that one. Oh, yep, that was a lizard. They're plump right now. They're getting bigger. They were scrawnier earlier. Anyway, so you see what's happening here. I'm just kind of unrolling and processing my situation and drawing you a caricature of my system, which itself doesn't show you the full picture, but the feeling of it might point you in a direction somewhere in the right hemisphere of the universe in which systemic Justin, holistic Justin at large, run man with a capital R, that guy lives. I like that. These issues of transparency because this podcast is raw and it has very minimal guidelines. But one of my guidelines is I want to take folks out for a jog or for a walk or for something, and then I want to talk. And the best thing about this podcast is you can turn me off anytime. You can turn this off anytime. So if you feel like I'm bulldozing you a little bit, particularly in my hyper-caffeinated, extremely motivated, delicious, and exuberant state, if you don't want that, you don't have to have it. You can break it up into little chunks. You can watch somebody else be really mellow. I watch mellow YouTubers all the time. I love those guys. There's a few of them that I watch. Not all the time, but sometimes that's what I want. Particularly for background noise while I'm doing other stuff. Anyway, hey, let's walk backwards for a sec. Different view. So yeah. Official podcast 19. Official podcast episode 19. I'm taking you along with me, and I'm showing up for that ride the way that I want to show up, for the things that I want to show up for, in order to do the things that I want to do. The rightness of that, when properly executed, cannot be overstated. For me to express that to you is probably another indication that I'm a highly creative person, which comes with its pros and its cons and all that stuff. But right now we're playing to our strengths. Because I've had this run-in with this self-censoring apparatus and since my system has been stressed, because I have a tendency, I think we've all done this, to align things really, really sneakily behind my own back so that the timing of things unfold in such a way as I have many medium-level decisions to make in a short period of time, enough to stress my system, where I could have just made a million little small decisions across the last few months, and things would have been way more stable here. Of course, if they had been that way, this podcast may never have happened. I may never have had the extra energy and the extra pinchy feeling and the extra everything, all the alignment to make this happen. And also, I recognize this about myself, and let's just continue to be transparent. I just tend to do that. I thought it was procrastination while it was happening. I was like, what am I doing? Am I intending this? It just keeps happening. I kept getting mollywopped by surprise things. But when I looked back at it, those surprise things were only surprise things because I hadn't done proper research during the years I've had to learn basic adulting in a lot of avenues. A lot of them. And now I've got that chance, and now I'm watching myself do it. It's really cool. But I'm doing a lot of it very quickly now. I want to complete that thought too. I was thinking about it in terms of, I'm procrastinating. Okay, yeah. That serves a purpose to think about it that way. But it also, if I think about it that way, one thing that ends up happening is I notice that I do that quite a bit. I notice the firing up of another apparatus inside of myself that's quietly whispering those words. And if I listen really hard, it's not true. It's not true that I was procrastinating. You could say it better with a word like compromise. I was compromising. Because typically what I'll do is I'll be in a way more stressed situation today because I did a series of things that led up to where I am from a certain perspective, from a certain place that I was. I was in a different place leading up to today regarding these last few months, all the micro decisions I could have made to make things smoother, etc. Instead of procrastination, because I was conscious of it and I was moving and making some micro decisions, particularly important ones for the day, all while taking care of myself the best I can and practicing that the entire time. Yeah, I was doing something differently. I was for this time, I had a word for it. I was easing in because this is a time of great dynamic change, and that is just something that my system is really rusty at. It's doable. I know some people who, if you talk to them, they would say, Justin really seems to have changed a lot over the course of the last X years. So the hardware is not that off, but it's a little rusty still. It's a little dull still. We need a lot of polishing, a lot of loving, and a lot of easing in. So I gave myself time to do me a heckin' moderate between making a few really big decisions, making a series of medium decisions, and streaming a whole bunch of little decisions and making little pivots. In time, perhaps things will be a little bit more in the little decisions territory, but that's not necessarily the best thing for everybody to make the proper changes they need to live the life they want. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. For me, I compromised and I eased in. I made a bunch of middle decisions that left a lot open, but also answered a lot of the basic safety and fundamental stuff. There was a regularity to it. There was a tempo to it that I'm not used to. So I paid for that. Adapting the hardware to this even more moderate application. Well, it's like I'm paying a one-time cost to obtain a level of proficiency with this neck of the woods in terms of my decision making and motivational apparatus, all the things that I talked about earlier. But to choose things the way that I've been choosing them is new, and it's happening alongside of other new things. So you get these spikes when there's a lot going on, until you realize, oh yeah, that's right. I've only really tweaked the dial a little bit. It just so happens that a lot of things had been tweaking as well. And we're looking forward to things pivoting more later. So it seems like a bigger deal than it is. So it's subtle, and ultimately I'm a little wordy, and I'm speaking a little quickly. I'm not making the best case. I'm not the best advocate for the concept that I'm trying to convey. I'm aware of that. But instead of persecuting myself for that, I'm going to let it lie, leave it there. Maybe something of what I said could be inspirational, connective, resonant.